Hello, hello, it's your friend Doublebite, and this is a swing and a miss. It's going to be kind of a rant slash instructional thing about hit-miss mechanics in video games. I want to try something different, and it's been on my mind lately as mechanics, so I figured let's make a video and see how this goes. Hey Doublebite, I didn't know you make games. I mean, I sort of do-ish, once in a while, you know, I try. But yeah, I've never made a full video game, and I also don't read a lot about game theory or game design or game development. I have not done my research. So, then why are you making this video? Well, mostly because I was walking and thinking about a game I played, which I'll get to later, where the hit-miss mechanics really pissed me off. And yeah, I got pissed, and then I wanted to make a video being like, hey, here's how you can not do that, because you made a bad game decision. And then I want to think about why that was a bad game decision in my eyes, because I can't just make that claim. I mean, I could, but I feel like I should try to justify my claim. And here we are. So I'm going to be talking mostly about random miss mechanics in game. So, you know, roll a d20, get a 1, miss, versus missing a skill shot in League of Legends. But I'll touch a bit on both. And I'm talking about video games, but I'm actually going to use D&D a lot for examples, because D&D has kind of a rich source of random mechanics. So, before we talk about random mechanics, let's talk a little bit about randomness as a concept. So, why do we have random elements in games? I mean, clearly not every game has random elements. Go has no random elements. Chess has no random elements. So why do some games have them? And there's probably tons of articles and videos about this or whatever, but I'm just going to break it down to 3 things that came to me. One is tension and excitement. It's exciting for something to be random, to be uncertain. This is why gambling is popular. It's exciting to get a critical hit, and it's exciting to not know if you're going to miss. So a level of randomization can make something feel more engaging and more exciting. Second is differentiation. This is a very broad category, from, you know, Pokemon IV combinations to layouts in a Civilization 4 map to picking up a flaming sword versus a freezing sword in a roguelike. Random elements make things feel fresher, more engaging. And this is kind of a pitfall that some games fall into, most famously No Man's Sky, which had a lot of differentiation, but didn't make it meaningful differentiation. That differentiation didn't give you tension and excitement. So these all interplay with each other. And the last one is forced adaptation. So, for those of you who aren't familiar, this picture is of the game Puerto Rico, which is a very low randomness game. To the best of my thinking, the only random element is, if you can see on the bottom right there, there's 4 little tiles. The gray one on the left is a quarry, and the other 3 are different kinds of crops. So those are 3 kinds of crops out of 5. And those 3 are the only ones available to the players. So, if you were like, hey, I'm gonna plant lots of corn this game, and your first turn, no corn shows up there, maybe you'll still go with the corn strategy, or maybe you'll go, okay, let me switch to tobacco, or sugar, or indigo. Randomness should have the effect of making the player rethink a decision. Because otherwise, if it's just random, it happened and has no meaning, then why is it in the game? Because this is an interactive medium. It's not interactive. Anyway, you can tell I practice this, right? Yeah, totally. Shut up, it took me a long time to write the slides. Yes, I'm doing this as slides. Whatever. So, we're going to be focusing mostly on tension and excitement and forced adaptation, as far as when we're looking at hit and miss mechanics. Differentiation actually does play a role, but it's a more kind of passive role, so we'll get to that. And by get to that, I mean it will actually pop up here and there. But let's look at the combat cycle And this is basically the cycle for all games. The player executes an action, they get an outcome, they plan for their next action. And as you can see, execution, before the execution there's tension, what's going to happen. The outcome is when you're excited or dismayed at the outcome. And then the planning is when you adapt. So randomness at each of these stages, or randomness affects each of these stages, and henceforth missing interacts with these stages. So we'll talk about the missing rules. The golden rule: missing as a mechanic should enhance player experience. If the game is not made better by introducing hit and miss mechanics, don't include them. That's it. Golden rule. You should want players to feel good about missing, because missing makes other things feel good. And again, we're talking about random missing here. That's going to be very clear, but non-random missing also matters here. Before I get too tangenty, let's go into the details more. So, rule number 1. Missing should occur to player decision making. This makes sense. It's the interactive medium. Players' decisions should affect the outcomes to a very large degree. So let's look at the classic example, swords versus axes. Traditionally in games, axes do more damage and hit less often, or cleave and hit less often, or something, and swords are your basic, you attack, they hit or they miss. Again, that's not necessarily a constant RNG. Well, it is every time you attack, it's constant RNG, but it's a decision. Missing in this case due to an axe is because the player has chosen a weapon that misses more often. It's a conscious effort. People aren't going to go, wow, I'm only hitting 50% of the time, this game sucks. People going, I'm only hitting 50% of the time because I'm using an axe. Do I want to switch to the sword? This video is largely about agency, because missing is inherently removing agency. The player wanted to hit. You are telling the player they did not hit. So you should have a good reason for telling the player that you're taking this element of agency away from them by making them miss. I don't know why I had 2 slides of that. Whoopsie. Next is choice versus misfortune. Okay. Warning here, I have not played Fallout, and I've played very little XCOM. So I'm going to use these 2 for examples, but I'm talking out my ass. You're warned there, but you shouldn't be that surprised. So, the VAT system in Fallout lets you aim a shot at a specific body part, and it will show you a percentage of each of these body parts being hit. So, if you shoot for the head and miss, that's on you. You've chosen a shot, a specific area. You've chosen a specific area for a reason. Oh, a headshot will do more damage. And even though it's a lower hit chance, you have accepted this risk and internalized this risk. You had a choice of different options, and you chose one that was less likely to work. Compared to XCOM, where if you attack, there is a chance you will hit or miss. And that feels kind of bad. You can choose targets, obviously, you can choose different actions, but on a basic attack level, if your plan is A attacks B, and there's going to be a chance that it fails, it's going to feel real shitty if it fails. Because it's like, well, he's right there, or, oh, I'm as close as I could get. You have, at a certain point, you are out of options to affect that chance, and that can feel uncomfortable. And if you'll notice, both of these games are taking something that feels physical and giving an abstract number. This is one of the reasons that you don't see missed chances in shooters usually. You know, you're not going to see a missed chance of playing Counter-Strike. Why? Because you should feel like you can aim, you can see this thing visually, of course that would hit. And these are 2 games where they're kind of breaking the immersion a little bit because of their genre, or because of enhancements to the genre that they're making. They're saying this thing that you see is not quite what you see. In Fallout's case, it's because you're doing a specific game mechanic. But in XCOM's case, it's taking this immersive environment and applying some of these abstractions that you usually don't see in a game with these graphics. Because the visuals are playing a lot of effect here. In roguelikes, hitting and missing is just accepted. There's nothing telling you visually this should have connected. But can you imagine in Dark Souls standing next to someone and swinging your sword at them, their leg, and the sword goes through their leg and the game says miss in big letters, in the big you died letters? That'd be ridiculous. So it's important to remember that gaming is a visual medium frequently, and that giving someone hit miss as a mechanic, especially numeric hit miss, is an abstraction that distorts their perspective when looking at the physical game. That was a big XCOM tangent, I'm sorry. Let's move on. So here's an example, another example of a random miss mechanic. League of Legends used to have the dodge rune. Let's say you had 5% dodge. What that would mean is enemies physically attacking you had a 5% chance to just say miss. And that felt real bad. Because as a carry, you click the enemy, you see your bullet or slash fly towards them, you see it connect, and there's just a little miss. You have missed because they have done something that's kind of opaque. It's a passive. They're not actively doing anything to dodge your attack. They just have a chance of dodging. And Riot took that mechanic out because it definitely felt bad. Now, can you still miss when you're attacking in this game? Yes. There are skill shots where you see your big blast go across the screen, and if they step to the right, you have missed. But that's not random. There's also Teemo, aka Furry Satan, who can blind a character. If that character is blinded, all of their attacks will miss. Does that feel bad? Yes. But it's not random. The random mechanic of League of Legends, dodging, did not work. Because it's a game with high visual impact. Seeing your character hit and being told they miss feels bad. The enemy passively doing something that makes you not damage them feels bad. Now if you miss, it's actively your fault, you missed a skill shot, or they have done something to put you in a state where you were missing, so they have actively affected your chance to hit. And it still feels bad. That's why Teemo is aggravating as hell, because it does not feel good to attack someone and say miss. It doesn't, but at least you know it's his fault, not yours. And not RNGesus' fault. And of course, we have the D&D power attack. You have the choice of having a less chance of hit in exchange for doing more damage. It's on you if you miss, and that's okay, because you have taken a chance as an active decision. So, rule number 2. Missing should provide you with information. What does this mean? It can be mechanical information, it can be information as far as flavor. Missing is something that should be a distinct outcome. For example, missing is not the same as dealing 0 damage. You miss the halfling, you miss the halfling, you miss the halfling, you hit the halfling. What does this mean? The halfling is nimble. It's dodging your attacks. As opposed to, you hit the knight but do no damage, you hit the knight but do no damage, you quit this fucking game. You're hitting something that's heavily armored, and you're not doing damage. In this instance, maybe you need to change a strategy. You need to switch away from your sword, and you need to switch away from your axe, and switch to an accurate weapon in order to deal damage to a halfling. You need to drop your sword and get out your great mace in order to do damage to the heavily armored knight. Missing is the end result may be you did 0 damage, but in a well-designed game, it will mean something more than that. It will give you information about how to continue playing, whether that's flavorful or not. Here's another kind of great thing about D&D. In D&D, your hit chance is determined by the opponent's AC, armor class. And AC is this kind of composite term. A nimble character might have high AC because they can dodge. a heavily armored character will have high AC because they have heavy armor. So in this way, you only have one mechanic, AC, but it can capture different kinds of flavor. So, bad DMing, oh, I rolled to hit the soldier. Nope, you don't hit. That doesn't tell you anything about the scene, flavor-wise, about what physically just happened, or mechanically about what's required to hit this soldier. Whereas, better role-playing, the soldier ducks nimbly to the side. You're fighting an agile foe. Your miss now has meaning, as opposed to you hit the soldier, but they blocked it with their shield. So, based on these two rules, a derived rule is missing should have a knowable cause and effect. You should know why you missed, whether it's mechanical, flavor-wise. Missing shouldn't just be something that happens. And there are exceptions to this later. Roguelikes bend this rule a little bit, but we'll get more into that later. But in general, you should know why you missed. One thing that, I don't have a screenshot for this, but one thing that would always kill me is that in Civ 4, it would be like, you have an 80% chance of winning this engagement, and it's like, I have 3 tanks and they have 2 spearmen. Where is that 20% coming from? Oh, well, you're standing in a field and they're standing in a swamp. So they have a defensive bonus. I'm like, okay. I get that that's what the cause is, but it's not a very internalized cause. You don't have a sense of what's more that could be there. And sometimes it would just be, hey, you have a 90% chance of winning, and they're both standing in empty fields, and then you lose. And it's like, why? You should always know why you missed, and whether it's your fault, whether it's the NPC, the defending agent's fault that you missed. But to not have a knowable cause and effect takes away that player agency that I've been ranting about. Now let's go to an example. Oh yeah, I have another counter example. Fighting games. It would suck if you swung at a fighting game and it just missed them arbitrarily. That would feel terrible. Especially because fighting games are about skill. So you're like, I have applied my skill to this game, my reflexes, and I've gotten an outcome that I have no idea why. As opposed to, if they shield, you did no damage, but you didn't miss, per se. You attacked, and they did something to counter that. And again, going back to the XCOM example, yes, we know that guns should miss. If we're playing a real-time shooter, and we shoot, and we miss, we know that our aim is bad. But that doesn't abstract well to our character's aim is bad. This person's aim is bad in this game, and we're being told that their aim is bad, no matter what circumstance that we are observing. So, can we have too much cause and effect? Runestone Keeper. Now, I have one or two of videos of this game, and I've played hours of this game, just being raging at it. Raging at this game. And if the developers, for ever seeing this, it's a good game. It's not my kind of game, and I think there's a couple things that are very wrong about this game, but it is clever, it is creative, I am glad it exists. The hit-miss mechanics are bullshit. So, it's a roguelike. And as I mentioned before, I'm willing to give roguelikes a little bit more leeway on hit-miss mechanics because they're such abstract games. They're so visually simple. But, let's look here. So, we have, this is like a little screenshot from our character screen, and our weapon has 10 attack, and it's a 78% chance to hit. Okay, so let's find an enemy. Well, our enemy has an 80% chance to hit us, and does 3 damage and has 8 HP, and has an 8% chance to dodge. So first of all, I don't know if that's additive or multiplicative. I'm guessing there's a 78% chance that we'll hit, and then after that, there's an 8% chance that he'll dodge. So basically, I don't know the math on that. But okay, so we have a 80% chance to hit, and then 8% of, let's say 10% of that time we won't hit. So that's -8. So I think we have like a 72% chance to hit, actually, if we're doing very fuzzy math, so about 70% chance to hit. And if we hit, we'll do 10 damage and kill it in one hit. But if we don't hit, we'll take 3 damage, because we attack, then it attacks. So how much is 3 damage? Well, 3 damage is about 10% of our health. So each attack, we have a 70% chance of taking no damage, or a 30% chance of taking 10% of our health. How do we get our health back? Here's the thing. In many roguelikes, you can just wait and heal health. But in this game, you have to click around a map and click squares. And some squares will have hearts that will heal you. And some squares will have spikes that do more damage. And some squares will have more monsters. And monsters block squares. And you need to kill monsters to get experience so that you don't die in later levels. And you need to keep clicking squares so you can find the exit to the next floor. And you heal more based on killing monsters. So you could end up healing, the amount you end up healing per stage depends on how many monsters you've killed. And you can also dual wield, which gives each of your weapons a different hit chance. Yeah, like, how am I supposed to be able to make an accurate decision whether I should attack the enemy? Because I can't just click around the entire map. I might reveal traps that hurt myself. I might reveal health that I didn't need. It's just maddening. And then you add in block chances, armor. For a game that's so abstract and so simple, there should not be that much confusion about hitting and missing. There shouldn't. Additionally, which we're going to go into Rule 3, if each time an enemy hits you does 10% of your health, and there can be 5 enemies on the floor, your health is depleting very quickly without a way to replenish it. Because like I said, there's no resting in that game. There's only what random health you find. Which brings me to Rule 3. Missing should be short-term, impactful, and only short-term. Missing should not be life or death. It can suck. It should suck. It should dramatically change things. If you make an attack in Civ, and it's like a 70% chance, and you lose that army, that should be impactful. But losing that army shouldn't mean you instantly lose the game. For example, again, going back to a D&D thing, not ideal. I backstab the ogre. You don't pierce his hide. He turns to look at you, then eats you. Curse you, RNGesus! Especially because it's D&D, you roll a die. You can do the math on how likely you are to succeed, but you also don't necessarily know the outcome, because that's at the DM's discretion. So, basically, you missed once, and now your character is dead. And that feels bad because it was a random chance. Better gameplay, you try to backstab the ogre, he turns, I offer the ogre gold to attack someone else. You have taken this short-term disadvantage of being the ogre's newest target. But you now have done this to make an adaptation, to make a new strategy. That's the idea behind good miss mechanics. In Runestone Keeper, if I miss attacking an enemy, I don't have the option to stop attacking the enemy. Or I guess I can attack a different enemy. But at the end of the day, I need to keep on attacking these enemies because otherwise I will lose the game. And every miss I take will make me closer to losing the game without a recourse of course adjustment. That's the thing. Missing should require, or potentially require, course adjustment. And I think that's the real key that I should have said at like slide 1. And the basic exception to this rule is when missing does basically equal 0 damage. In Dungeon Crawl and many roguelikes, the amount of health you have when fighting an enemy is either health or almost dead. You can just mash that attack button over and over and over again, and until you're at very little health, it doesn't matter where you hit or miss. It doesn't matter where you miss or do 0 damage. You either are hitting often enough that you're going to win the fight, or you're getting to the point where you need to back away from the fight. But at the end of the day, each individual miss doesn't have to matter if there are going to be so many of them in one engagement. Now, in roguelikes, why do we have miss? Why don't we just say 0 damage? That's that kind of sword versus axe differentiation we mentioned earlier, where it feels different to fight a halfling as it does to fight a knight, because missing is different from 0 damage. So there's a flavor element involved, but at the end of the day, looking at rule 3, individual misses don't have to matter if there's just going to be so many of them. Rule number 4. 1% successes feel better than 1% misses. By this is another agency thing. Taking a risk and having it be rewarded feels good. Doing something and having it not work feels bad. I like to think in games that if you have a high chance of success, it should feel interesting that it's not successful. You know, it's a kind of a math illusion. 90% chance of success sounds really high. You still have a 1 in 10 chance of losing, but that 1 in 10 chance will feel super shitty. As opposed to, in Fallout, with a VAT system, when you're consciously making the choice to aim for the head, it will feel great when you hit the head. It won't feel that bad when you miss, because it's like, well, I just took a risk. I just took a 1 in 10 shot of hitting the head. But if you pick the body and we're like, yeah, 90% of the time you're going to hit this, and you miss it twice in a row, you're like, what the hell? I just took the safe option and I'm being punished for it. I should have just gone for the head. It's a basic psychological thing. Missing is way more exciting when you're expecting to miss and don't, rather than when you're expecting to hit and you miss. So the corollary here is, and this is all very opinion based, obviously, but default 100% options are good tools. Not always required, but I think it's an underrated mechanic to let people do a weak action that has a very high chance of success, and then let them take riskier actions, because they're going to. And sometimes you need to. If you're against a bigger opponent, a stronger opponent, you can't just trade body blows. You need to then take those risks. But in general, I think it's an underrated mechanic to give players that little bit more agency in not having every action be a hit or a miss. Hey look, we just tied back to rule 1 with player agency. So, you know, rule 3 was short-order impact, and rule 4 is that, you know, essentially missing feels bad, hitting feels good. The dread rules, players should not fear missing. Again, going back to RuneScape Keeper, at a certain point, you fear attacking an enemy because you're at 50% health, and oh, if I just click randomly, I might find the next floor. But I'm not strong enough to do the next floor, but if I attack, I might get hurt, and then I'm not going to be strong enough to beat the next floor anyway. You should not fear individual misses. You should be like, okay, I missed, evaluate. But you shouldn't, if there is a default option, you shouldn't have to take the default option all the time. Missing should be something that you're willing to do. If you are in fear of missing and you have that paralysis, missing is playing too much of an impact. If you don't care about missing at all, maybe missing is not playing enough of an impact. But action paralysis on basic game actions, I don't think is a good mechanic. This is, again, we're getting to the very opinion-heavy territory here. Doing something, never doing an action because you might miss, is indicating, to me at least, that a mechanic is not well tuned. So, wrapping this up, when should missing be a mechanic in a game? When it can add meaningful tension. When there is that uncertainty, and when something bad can happen if you miss. The idea of short-term consequences. To empower players to take risks. To go for that 1 in a million shot. To give themselves that tension. Not just to have this passive ambient tension, oh well, you might miss and that would be bad. But to say, You're going to take this risk. You're going to put yourself out there, and it could go wrong. To force players to adjust plans, to make something less certain. And again, I feel like D&D ties this all up really nicely. As far as passively providing tension with the default hit mechanics, with having distinct results, and giving players options to take risks. And again, the other example I've been using, Fallout, I think does a great job with this, and a lot of games that have just miscellaneous random mechanics such as roguelikes, missing becomes less tense, becomes less meaningful overall. But actually, I want to go back to a roguelike example, the converse. Ogres have a high chance to miss, but do a lot of damage. That adds interesting tension compared to an enemy who just does 1 damage every turn. The enemy does, say 3 damage every turn, versus hits 1/3 of the time but deals 10 damage. That's tense. The previous enemy you can fight when you're at 6 health. The ogre, you need to run at 6 health in case it does that 10 damage to you. So, I'm kind of focusing on player agency and player missing. Enemy is missing also adds tension, if done correctly. And then to create mechanical variation, missing feels different from doing 0 damage, and it should. It should have different choices. It should cause different things. Mechanical variation also expands out to axes versus swords. It expands out to flavor. Nimble, high AC D&D character versus heavily armored high AC character. Basically, missing adds another dimension. It adds another flavor of combat. And that can be a really cool thing. Anyway, I'm done ranting. I hope this made any coherent sense. Didn't just whip this up and then kind of want to roll with it and see if it'd be interesting to some people. This is just some thoughts I've had. Please feel free to share with me experiences you've had with games where you felt like the hit-miss mechanics were really solid, or games where they felt like just pissed you off all the time. And yeah. Hope you enjoyed, and until next time, double bite out.